Hi guys, welcome back to Christy's Book Corner. I'm your host, Christy Mason, and today we're going to continue with Inkheart, and it's chapter 23. Okay, ready? Chapter 23, A Night Full of Words. There's Doogie, my friend's dog. Maggie stayed in the hotel while Mo went to the rentals agency to collect the car he had booked. She took a chair out onto the balcony, looked out over its white painted railing to the sea shining like blue glass beyond the buildings, and tried to think of nothing at all. The sound of all traffic drafting up to her was so loud she almost didn't hear Eleanor's knock. Eleanor was already on her way down the corridor when Maggie opened the door. "Oh, there you are," said Eleanor said, coming back and looking around embarrassed. She was hiding something behind her back. "Yes, Mo's gone to get the mentor collar. I've got something for you. A goodbye present." Eleanor produced a flat parchment parcel from behind her back. It wasn't easy to find a book without any unpleasant characters in it, but I absolutely had to find one your father would read aloud to you without doing any damage. I don't think anything can happen with this one. Maggie undid the floral gift wrapping. The cover of the book showed 2 children and a dog. The children were kneeling a narrow piece of rock on stone, looking anxiously down at the abyss yawning beyond them. "They're poems," explained Eleanor. "I don't know if you think that kind of thing, but I thought that if your father read them aloud, they'd sound wonderful." Maggie opened the book. She read, "Oh, if you're a bird, be an early bird, and catch the worm for your breakfast plate. If you're a bird, be an early bird, and if you're not, you're a worm, sleep late." The words were like a little melody singing to her off to the pages. She carefully closed the book. "Thank you, Eleanor," she said. I'm sorry I don't have anything for you." "Oh, and there's something else you might like," said Eleanor, taking another little parcel out of her new handbag. "Someone who devours books like you should have this one," she said, "but I think you'd better read it on your own. There are any number of villains in it. All the same, I think you'll enjoy it. After all, there's nothing like a few comforting pages of a book when you're away from home, right?" Maggie nodded. "Most Prums will join you the day after tomorrow," she said. "But you'll say good-bye to him, too, before you leave, won't you?" She pushed Eleanor's first present onto the chest of drawers near this door, and unwrapped the second. Maggie was pleased to see it was a thick book. "Oh, never mind that. You do it for me?" said Eleanor. "I'm not good at saying good-bye, anyway. We'll be seeing each other soon again, and I've already told him to look after you. Oh, and never leave books lying around open," she added, before turning around. "It breaks their spine." "That's good to know. But I expect your father's told you that 1,000 times already." "More often than that," said Maggie, but Eleanor had already gone. A little later, Maggie heard someone dragging a suitcase to the elevator, but she didn't go out into the corridor to see if it was Eleanor. She didn't like the goodbyes either. Maggie was very quiet for the rest of the day. Late in the afternoon, Mo took her out for a meal in a little restaurant nearby. Dusk was falling from they came out again, and there were a great many people in the darkening streets. In one square, crowded were particularly dense, and as Maggie pushed her way through them with Mo, she saw they were standing around a fire eater. It was very quiet as Dustfinger let the burning torch lick his bare arms, but as soon as he bowed and audience clapped, Farid went around with a little silver dish, which was only thing that didn't quite seem to belong to in these surroundings. Farid followed, however, looked much the same as the boy who lounged around on the beach, nudging one another when girls passed by. His skin was a little darker, perhaps, and his hair was a little blacker, and it would never have occurred to anyone looking at him that he had just slipped out of a storybook in which carpets could fly, mountains could open, and lamps granted. Oh my god, this is from Aladdin. Wishes. He wore pants and a t-shirt instead of his blue full-length robe. He looked older in them. Dustfinger must have bought the clothes for him, as well as the shoes in which he walked very carefully, as if his feet weren't quite used to them yet. When he saw Maggie in the crowd, he gave her a shy nod and passed on quickly. Dustfinger spat on one last fireball into the air. Its size made even the bravest in the audience set back, then pulled down the torches and picked out his juggling balls. He threw them so high in the air that spectators had to tilt their heads right back to watch, then caught them and knocked them up in the air again with his knees. They rolled along his arm as he pulled. The invisible threads emerged from behind his back as he had plucked them out of the empty air, bunched off his forehead, his chin such light, weightless, dancing little things. It would all have seemed easy enough, just a pretty game, if it hadn't been for Dustfinger's face, that remained deadly serious behind the whirling balls, as if it had nothing to do with his dancing hand, nothing to do with their skill, nothing to do with their carefree lightness. Maggie wondered whether his fingers still hurt. They looked red, but perhaps that was just the firelight. When Dustfinger bowed and put his balls back in the backpack, the spectators were slow to despair. But finally only Mo and Maggie were left. Farid was sitting on the paved stone, counting the money he had collected. He looked happy, as if he had never done anything else in his life. "So you're still here," said Mo. "Why not?" Dustfinger was collecting his props, like two bottles he had used in Eleanor's garden. The burnt-out torches, the bowl into which he spat in Rose's contents, and he now tipped carelessly over to the pavement. He had gotten himself a new bag. The only one was probably still in Capricorn's village. Maggie went over to the path, but Gwen wasn't in it. "I hoped you had been well away by now, going back north and somewhere else, somewhere Basto can't find you." Dustfinger shrugged his shoulders. "I have to turn some money first. Anyway, I like the weather here better, and the people are more likely to stop and watch. They're generous, too. Right, Farid? How much did we make this time?" The boys jumped when Dustfinger turned to him. Farid had put aside this. Oh no, this is not Aladdin. The dish with the money in it, and was just about to place a burning matchstick in his mouth. He quickly pinched it out with his finger. Dustfinger suppressed a smile. "He's dead set on learning to play with fire. I've shown him how to make little practice torches, but he's in too much of a hurry. he has blasted on his lips all the time. Maggie looked sideways at Farid. He seemed to be ignored then as he packed Dustfinger's things back into the bag, but she felt sure he was listening to every word that they said. Just met his eyes twice, those dark eyes, and the second time he turned away so abruptly that he almost dropped one of Dustfinger's bottles. Hey, be careful with that, will you? T- snapped Dustfinger impatiently. Sorry. I hope there's no other reason why you're still here, asked Dustfinger. Turned back to him. What do you mean? Dustfinger avoided his gaze. Oh, that. You think I'm going to go back for the book. You observe me a coward. Nonsense. Mo sounded irritated. Eleanor will be home tomorrow, he said. Nice for her. Dustfinger looked impassively at Mo's face. So why aren't you with her? Mo looked at the buildings around them and shook his head. There's someone I have to visit first. Here, who is it? Dustfinger put on a short-sleeved shirt, a bright garment with a pattern of large flowers. It doesn't suit his scarred face. There's someone who might still have a copy. Dustfinger's face remained unmoved, but his fingers gave him away. They were suddenly having difficulty getting the buttons on his shirt through the buttonholes. That's impossible, he said hoarsely. Capricorn would never have overlooked one. Mo shrugged. Maybe not, but I'm going to try all the same. The man I'm talking about doesn't sell the books either new or second-hand. Capricorn probably doesn't even know they exist. Dustfinger looked around. Someone was closing the shutters in one of the surrounding houses, and on the other side of the square a few children were playing around among the chairs of the restaurant until a waiter shooed them away. There was a smell of warm food and the liquid spirit that Dustfinger used to in his fury games, but no black-clad man could be anywhere, except for the bored-looking waiter who had straightened the chairs. So, who is this Mr. Stranger? Dustfinger lowered his voice to little more than a whisper. The man who wrote Inkheart. He lives not far from here. Jesus. Farid came over to them, holding the civil dish with the money in it. Gwen hasn't come back, he said, Dustfinger, and you don't have anything to tempt him. Should I buy a couple of eggs? No, he can look after himself. Dustfinger ran a finger over one of his scars. Put the money we've taken into the leather bag. You know, the one in my backpack. He told Farid. His voice sounded impatient. Maggie would have given Mo a hurt look if he had spoken to her like that, but Farid didn't seem to mind. He just hurried off purposefully. I really thought it would be over now. No way to get back ever again. Dustfinger broke off and looked up to the sky. A plane crossed the horizon, colorful lights blinking. Farid looked up at it too. He had put the money away and was standing expectantly beside the backpack. Something furry scuttled across the square, dug its claws into his pant leg, and clambered up to his shoulder. With a smile, Furry dug his hand into his pocket and offered Gwen a piece of bread. Suppose there really is still a copy. Dustfinger pushed his long hair back into his forehead. Will you give me another chance? Will you try to read me back into it? Just once. There was such a longing in his voice that it went to Maggie's heart. But Mo's face was not forthcoming. You cannot go back, and not into that book, he said. I know you don't want to hear me say so, but it's the truth. you're going to be resigned yourself to it. Perhaps I can help you some other way. I've got an idea, rather crazy, but still. He said no more, just shook his head and kicked an empty matchbox that was lying on the paving stone. Maggie looked at Mo in surprise. What kind of idea? Did he really have one, or was he just trying to comfort Dustfinger? If so, it didn't work. It hadn't worked. Dustfinger was looking at him with all his old hostily. I'm coming, he said. His fingers had left a little soot on his face when he struck his scar. I'm coming when you go to visit this man. Then we'll see. There was loud laughter behind them. Dustfinger looked around. Gwen was trying to climb on Farid's head, and the boy was laughing as if there was nothing better than to have Martin's sharp claws dig into your scalp. Well, he's not homesick anyway, murmured Dustfinger. I'll ask him. Not homesick in the least at all this, he added, waving a hand at his surroundings. All this appears to him, even the noisy, stinky cars. He's glad to be here. You've obviously done him a favor. The look he gave her father as he said these words as so reproachful that Maggie intuitively reached for Mo's hand. Gwen had jumped down from can't see the stupid thing. One of the children who had been roping among the tables bent down and looked incredulously at the little horns. But before the children could put a hand out the torch, Farid quickly intervened, picked Gwen up, and put the Martin back on his shoulder. So where does he live this? Dustfinger did not finish his sentence. About an hour's drive from here. Dustfinger said nothing. The lights of another plane were blinking up in the sky. Sometimes when I went into the spring to watch early morning, he murmured, there'd be a tiny fairy flitting above the water, not much bigger than that butterflies you have here, and blue as violet petals. They liked to fly into my hair. Sometimes they spat in my face. They weren't very friendly, but they shone like glowworms by night. I sometimes caught one and put it in a jar. If I let it out at night before going to sleep, I had wonderful dreams. Capricorn said they were trolls and giants too, said Maggie quietly. Dustfinger gave her a thoughtful look. Yes, they were, he said, but Capricorn wasn't particularly fond of them. He had liked to do away with them all. He had them hunted. He hunted anything that could run. It must be a dangerous world. Maggie was trying to imagine it all. The giants, the trolls, and the fairies. Mo had once given her a book about fairies. Dustfinger shrugged. Yes, it's dangerous. So what? This world's dangerous too, isn't it? Abruptly, he turned his back on Maggie, picked up his backpack, threw it over his shoulder, then waved to the boy. Farid picked up the bag with the balls and the torches, and followed him eagerly. Dustfinger went over to the Mo once more. Don't you dare tell the man about me, he said. I don't want to see him. I'll wait in the car. I only want to know if he still has a copy of the book. Understand? Mo shrugged his shoulders. As you like. Dustfinger impacted his reddened fingers and felt the taut skin. He might tell you how my story ends, murmured. Maggie looked at him in astonished. You mean you don't know? Dustfinger smiled. Maggie still didn't particularly like this smile. It seemed to apparently only to hide something else. What's so unusual about that princess? He asked quickly. Do you know how your story ends? Maggie had no answer to that. Dustfinger winked at her and turned. I'll be at the hotel tomorrow morning, he said. Then he walked off without turning back. Farid followed him, carrying the heavy happy as a stray dog who was found fond of his master at last. The night the full moon hung around and orange in the sky. Before they went to bed, Mo pulled back the curtains so they could see it. All brightly colored Chinese lantern among all the white stars. Neither of them could sleep. Mo had bought a couple of well-worn paperbacks that looked as if they had already passed through the hands of several people. Maggie was reading the book full of unpleasant characters that Eleanor had given her. She liked it, but at last her eyes closed with weariness, and she fell asleep beside her. Mo read on and on while the orange moon shone in the foreign sky outside. When, of course, dreams woke her with a start sometimes in the night, Mo was still sitting up in bed. They opened the book in his hand. The moon had disappeared long ago, and there were nothing but darkness to be seen through the window. "Can't you sleep?" said Maggie, sitting up. "It was my left arm that stupid dog bit, and now you know I sleep best on my left side. Anyway, there's too much going on in my head." "There's a lot going on in my head, too." Maggie turned to the bedside table and put the book of the poems that Eleanor had given her. She stroked the bindings past her head, over the curved spine, and traced the letters on the jacket with her forefinger. "You know something, Mo?" she said hesitantly. "I think I'd like to be able to do it, too." "Do what?" Maggie stroked the binding of the book again. She thought she could hear the pages whispering very quietly. "Read like that," she said. "Read out loud the way you do and make everything come to life." Mo looked at her. "You're out of your mind," he said. "That's what was causing all this trouble we're in." "I know." Mo closed his book, leaving his finger between the pages. "Remember something about Mo?" Read me something aloud, Mo," said Maggie quietly. "Please, just for once." She offered him the book of poems. "Eleanor gave me this as a present. She said nothing much could happen if you did." "Oh, did she?" Mo opened the book. "Suppose it does, though." He leafed through the smooth white pages. Maggie put her pillow close to his. "Do you really have any idea how you might be able to read Dustfinger back into the story? Or were you making it up?" "Nonsense. I'm useless to tell lies, as you know." "Yes, I do." Maggie couldn't help smiling. "Well, what's your idea?" "I'll tell you where I know it if it works." Mo was still leafing through Eleanor's book. Frowning, he read a page, turned it over, and read another. "Please, Mo." Maggie pulled closer to him. "Just one poem. A tiny little poem, please, for me." He sighed. "Just one." Maggie nodded. Outside, the noise of the cars had died down. The world was as quiet as if it had spun itself into a cocoon like a moth, preparing itself to slip out into the morning, young again and good as new. "Please, Mo, read to me," said Maggie. So Mo began filling the silence with words. He lured them out of the pages as if they had only been waiting for his voice. Words long and short, words sharp and soft, cooing, purring words. They danced through the room, panting stained glass pitchers, tickling the skin. Even when Maggie gnawed off, she could still hear them, although Mo had closed the book long ago. Words that explained the world to her, its dark side and its light side. Words that built as a wall to keep out bad dreams, and not a single bad dream came over the wall for the rest of the night. The next morning a bird flew down and perched on Maggie's bed, a bird as orange as the light of the last night's moon. She tried to catch it, but it flew away to the window where the blue sky was waiting for her. It collided with the invisible glass again and again, bumping its tiny head until Mo opened the window and let it out. "Well, do you still wish you could do it?" asked Mo, when Maggie had watched the bird fly away until it was merged with the blue of the sky. "It was beautiful," she said. Yes, but it will take this world, said Mode, and what gone to replace it in the world it came from. Maggie stayed up by the window as Mo went downstairs to pay their bill. She remembered the last poem that Mo had read before she fell asleep. She picked up the book from her bedside table, hesitated for a moment, and opened it. There is a place where the sidewalk ends and before the street begins, and there the grass grows soft and white, and there the sun burns crisp and bright, and there the moonbird rests from his flight to cool in the peppermint wind. Maggie whispered the words aloud as she read them, but no moonbird flew down from the lamp, and she must have been just imagining the smell of the peppermint. That's the end of chapter 23. Stay tuned for chapter 24, which will be tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, and turn on the notifications bell to be notified when I upload another video. And remember to dare to dream.